Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna make this an uncut video, so it's not gonna be, smooth like a heavily edited video. It will be slow and stumbly and imperfect, but today, when half of the videos on YouTube are AI generated, I think that imperfect but human videos have their own appeal. So, yeah, this will be kind of a slow video. Hopefully, you can do something in the garage while you're listening to this. Promise you, there is nothing to watch or see here. Go organize your shelves, your tackle, broom the floor, drink a beer, all that good stuff. But here is what I want to talk about in this video. Have you noticed when you read the comments under my videos that when somebody bought a high gear ratio ultralight reel, they always write in the comment the model of the reel, 2000 HG. Some of them are even XG for very high gear ratio. And the people who bought the whatever C2000S, you people, you never put the model number when you write the comment. You just say, yeah, I bought a Vanquish, but you're like almost ashamed. What is this? Why do the people who bought the high gear ratio always put the model? They're always so proud. You can feel the satisfaction that they experienced while typing this comment. 2000 XG. I'm so smart. I'm so good. You guys, you got the regular gear ratio. That's okay for you. But for me, I need the advanced technology. I need high technology. For me, HG is a good fit. So this is what I'm going to talk about in this video. I will tell you guys that buying a high gear ratio reel for ultralight fishing is stupid. It is just stupid. And you people that bought the C2000S, you did the smart thing. Have a little pride, okay? I'm not saying put the model number though. That's like Trump is like always need to show everybody this. Don't put the model number, just be proud, okay? Now, let me ask you this question. What separates a good ultralight reel from a bad ultralight reel? Or expensive ultralight reel from cheap ultralight reel? Or Japanese ultralight reel from a Chinese ultralight reel? What separates them? I'll give you a few seconds to, you don't need to write a comment, but just think for a second, what makes a reel, an ultralight reel, good? I'm sure everybody said the first intuition of everybody is smooth. Okay, smooth. And smoothness was for decades, the main separating factor between good and bad reels in general, and also ultralight reels in particular. But smoothness is no longer a separating factor between good and bad ultralight, expensive and cheap, Japanese and Chinese. They're all smooth, my friends. I'm here to tell you, my kids are yelling, disregard that if you hear it. I'm here to tell you that the Vanford is not smoother than the Sahara. I don't even know if the Stella is smoother than the Sahara. This is gonna rough some some Stella owners' feelings, but I'm sure under a microscope, if you can examine the surface, you can prove that the Stella gear surface is smoother. But can somebody in a blind test who doesn't know what they have in their hand feel? Smoothness, take this from me, is no longer a separating factor between expensive and cheap reels. The Legalis and the Sahara are just as smooth as any high-end reel. Even the Chinese, I reviewed some Chinese reels, reviews that you people didn't watch, but you keep asking me, why don't you review this Chinese rod or Chinese reel? You never watched this. But I said in some Chinese reel reviews that, my gosh, they're surprisingly smooth. They're still clunky and heavy rotor and unbalanced, but as far as smoothness goes, last one I reviewed, Apex or something, my gosh, it was smooth. It was actually smoother. I reviewed a $30 Chinese reel that was smoother than this $300 2017 Shimano X Sense. Think about this, $30 Chinese reel, smoother than 2017 Apex. This was the best Shimano could make back then. Okay, maybe Stella was the best, but you get my drift. Smoothness, scratch it. And by the way, here is a little tap on my own shoulder. I made a video in 2019 reviewing the Presso Limited, Daiwa Presso Limited reel. In 2019, I said smoothness is no longer a factor. This thing is the factor, is what separates the reels. And nobody was talking about it in 2019. Today, everybody's talking about it, and you guys take it for granted. But in 2019, find somebody else who brought this before yours truly. So what is then, if not smoothness? Weight, right? That's the second thing. After smoothness, people fall on weight. Yeah, the expensive reels are always lighter. They're never going to be heavier, except with Stella is heavier than Vanquish, but for a very good reason. But yeah, they use aluminum instead of steel and carbon instead of plastic. So they're lighter, but even the weight depends where the weight is. Weight in the rotor, weight reduction in the rotor, very good for everything. Weight reduction in the body, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Weight reduction in the gears, if you care about durability, making the gears aluminum instead of steel or bronze reduces durability. And then what if you have a cheap budget rod, cheap and budget, one of them is redundant, but this video is unedited. You bought a rod from Bass Pro Shops and it's kind of heavy. My gosh, my son. Give me a second. Okay, I am gonna cut this part out, but the kids didn't know that I was making a video and They were chasing each other around the house and screaming as loud as they can, like the Indians were attacking a train, like it's just making as much noise as they can. But I was talking about the weight. If you have a rod that you bought from Bass Pro Shops and it's a little bit heavy, a 180-gram reel instead of 150-gram reel will actually make your rod feel better. So even the weight is not an absolute advantage. Even with some Japanese rods, if the rod is very long and a little bit tip heavy, if your reel is like even 15 grams heavier, it can make the rod feel nicer and somehow more expensive. I don't know why my brain sometimes associates quality with weight. When I put the Sahara on the Suara XR, I've told you a million times, makes the Suara XR rod 7'6", makes it feel expensive. The cheaper reel makes it feel expensive. So even the weight of the reel is not an absolute advantage. In general, it is, but it's not always. But there are features in ultralight reel that are always an advantage and particularly valuable for ultralight fishing. What are these features? These features are resistance and inertia. Okay, these are different things. People always confuse them, and I don't want to talk about them in this video either, but resistance is resistance. When you're turning the handle and spinning the rotor and pulling your swim bait through the water, is it easy to turn the handle, or is there a force that works against you and makes turning the handle difficult? That's resistance. Inertia is different because it's not about continuous operation, but it's about stop and go. Inertia is the property of bodies and people to want to do what they're doing right now. See, right now, the rotor is not spinning. If you tell it, start spinning, it will tell you, I don't want to. Okay, so you have to overcome the sitting inertia to start spinning it. And also, once it's spinning and you tell the rotor stop spinning, it will again tell you, I don't want to stop spinning. I want to keep spinning. You let the handle, that this is inertia. It keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. Everybody wants to do what they have been doing for decades. You know, I made amazing ultralight jig heads at very low costs. A very low cost. Go to Fish USA and see all the jigs there. You're not going to find jigs for $4, let alone with Japanese hooks. But inertia, people are used to the big sickle hooks, size 4, the Arkies. They say it doesn't matter, fish is not line shy hook. This inertia. Bodies and people, they want to do what they want to do. But for ultralight fishing, resistance and inertia are very bad due to the specific techniques. Twitching a 1 gram trout magnet. What do? Twitch, reel. Twitch, reel. Twitch. Now we change to 3 twitches. Now we trick them. Reel again. So this is stop and go. So having a big, heavy Chinese rotor, the difference between a Fluger and Sahara, which both cost $50, and everybody says the Fluger is just as smooth. Yeah, it's pretty smooth. But the Sahara rotor is so easy to turn, and the Fluger, it's like trying to push a train. There is the inertia of the heavy, clunky Fluger rotor makes it just nasty for twitching a 1 gram trout magnet. And that's the point that I made in 2019 when I reviewed the Presso Limited. I'm going to put a link to that video if somebody wants to see a 6-year video of yours truly with a lot more hair than now. But in that video, I said, man, these reels, they are all smooth today. You can't win on smoothness. Expensive versus, you're not getting any smoother buying expensive reel. But what I was shocked with this Presso Limited was, my gosh, it's like you have no gears. It's like I'm just turning a handle that's not connected to anything. It was just so easy to turn. And I made this observation, believe it or not, back then I didn't prepare anything, not even any list of notes. I have here a few list of notes, a few bullet points I have to cover in this video. The rest I'll figure. But it was completely spontaneous, and I said, man, this smoothness, no. The difference between expensive and cheap, between good and bad, is the resistance and the inertia. It's so easy to turn. This Presso Limited. In 2021, Shimano Vanquish was the first reel to explicitly market low resistance and low inertia. I remember this because it was released on my birthday and I made a video about it. And I talked about this paragraph in the marketing. I've never seen such a paragraph before. Everybody was talking about smoothness. But Vanquish advertised explicitly low resistance and low inertia. That everybody's talking about it, and you're like, I know it. They didn't know, but everybody is an expert, You know that the light has reached every corner of the room when even Tactical Bassin starts to talk about it. Even Tactical Bassin made a video about the low resistance in the Vanfort next year. That's how you know that this is no longer new. Once a Tactical Bassin makes a video about it, this is not a new issue. It's beaten. It's a horse beaten to death. So, I apologize for the long tangent, but I have to set up the problem, the goalposts, correctly, so we can separate good from bad, at least for ultrawide fishing reels. Because, I don't know, bass fishing, saltwater fishing, ultrawide fishing, I don't know everything, but I know a lot more than most people. So, yeah, how do expensive reels improve resistance and inertia? For inertia, the number one factor that reduces inertia, the number one factor, it's like 95% of the entire property of inertia, is lighter rotor. So the Sahara has a heavy rotor. The Vanfort has a carbon rotor, much lighter. And it is much easier to turn 6 times per 1 crank a light rotor than it is to turn a heavy rotor. The rest of if you put more weight in the body, is just weight. You're not turning it. It's about rotational mass. Ask ChatGPT to explain to you the importance of low rotational mass and reduction in mass that is rotating is extremely important. Many years ago, I had a 1997 Nissan Maxima. I replaced the flywheel on the engine with aluminum, aluminum. Man, that engine, when you give gas, it was, whoa, it would rev like a bike with the lighter flywheel. The rotor is kind of like a flywheel. It serves a different purpose, but mechanically. Anyway, I don't want to go on these tangents so easily. But when you buy expensive reel, you get a lighter rotor and you immediately reduce the inertia. The video is getting too long. Let me stop this, start a new video so I don't have to upload a 30 gigabyte file. I don't know how to do that. How else do we improve resistance and inertia with an expensive reel? Well, all of the parts inside are special. We have bearings that are tuned for low resistance. They have, in Daiwa's case, some of them have oil instead of grease. Some of them have nothing at all. No oil, no grease, nothing at all. Other improvements to reduce resistance, the gears of the expensive reels have a special coating on the surface, and not the coating on the Sahara, the black coating which just hides the imperfections, but the coating in the surface of the the surface of the Vanquish is different than the surface of the Vanford. Okay. Then the surface of the gears of the Stella is different than the surface of the gear of the Vanford. So when these gears make contact and turn, this expensive surface treatment reduces the friction. So you have less resistance. It just feels that it's easier to turn just because of this expensive surface preparation. The main shaft inside of the reel, also on the expensive reels, have special surface coating that makes it more slick and slippery. It's like low resistance surface coating that the Sahara doesn't have. The Vanford, I believe, the main shaft in the Vanford is better than the main shaft of the Sahara. So no need for examples, but in general, the components in the high-end reels have better surface coating, the bearings have lower resistance. They're what they say tuned, okay? They're tuned to have lower resistance, and the rotor is made of more expensive materials to reduce the rotational weight. So we went from the Sahara to the Vanford, and now we have lower resistance and a lower inertia, and everything is good. Money well spent. But what happens, man? 15 minutes in the video, I apologize for them, so slow. 15 minutes in the video, I get to the main point of the video. What happens when you buy a high gear ratio reel? So now instead of, these are two Shimanos, both of them 2017, 4.8 gear ratio, 6.3 gear ratio. Now, with one turn of the handle, instead of doing 100 units of work, you're trying to do 135 units of work because you want the rotor to, you're trying with one crank to rotate the rotor not 4.8 times but 6.3 times. Some of the reels go to 7, 8, even 9. I believe Abu Garcia made one reel with even 9 gear ratio. Not certain on that. But XG stands for more than 6. Definitely there is 7 gear ratio. So you all of a sudden want to complete a lot more work with the same one crank of the handle. So if everything else is equal, ceteris paribus, the two exactly the same reels, exactly the same conditions, but now with one crank of the handle, you want to complete 135% of the work that you were doing before. Of course, you have to put more force. Now, to complete the same work, you have to put a lot more work into cranking. In other words, to the user, turning the handle is now a lot more difficult. Think about casting a BG1 2 gram with a 2-inch Kitek, okay, casting it, and constant retrieve speed, let's say 2 cranks per second. 2 cranks per second, okay. Same speed with both reels. Imagine everything else is the same. Size, spool, line, everything else is the same. Well, now you want to turn 6.3 times the rotor. Now instead of pulling the lure with 70 centimeters per crank, now you want to pull it 100 centimeters per crank. The numbers are approximate, but the difference between 4.8 and 6.3 is like 1.35, so 35% more. Well, of course it will be more difficult. And by the way, if you want to do it with the same speed, if you want to pull the 2 gram BG1 with a 2-inch Kitek with the same speed, like 2 cranks per second, the increment in extra work, extra force that you have to put on the handle is actually not linear. I will add here some, I got some exact numbers from ChatGPT, and for that part you might want to pause the video and come look at the numbers from ChatGPT. But because the increase of effort is not linear, you have a lot more resistance in the water. By the way, testing resistance like this is not a good way because you have no lure. Put a 2-inch Kitek and start to pull it through the water. Then you will see how difficult it is to turn a 6.3 gear ratio spinning reel. But ChatGPT says that if you want to turn the handle with the same speed, the difference in force between a 4.8 gear ratio and 6.3, the difference in force is not 35%, but more than double. More than double. So you have to put so much force that you cannot turn with the same speed. You have to turn slower now, but it doesn't matter. The gear ratio will always work against you. So what happened then? Okay. We started with a Sahara or a Legalis, $50, $60, $70, depending on where you buy it. And we thought we are upgrading to the next platforms. So we bought the Vanford for $250, approximate. I don't know, tariffs, matters, shipping. So we went from $50 to $250 to get the surface treatment, to get the tuned bearings, to get the lighter rotor, to have lower resistance and inertia, because as we explained, it is resistance and inertia, resistance and inertia, resistance and inertia that make an ultralight reel good. So we got all of this upgraded rotor, upgraded main shaft, upgraded gears, tuned up bearings, and in the end, the full bought a 6.3 gear ratio and negated everything. This is what you are doing when you buy a 6.3 gear ratio. You negate everything. Your resistance and inertia with a rotor that you want to spin 6.3 times now. You're trying to spin it 6.3 times. Of course, you're gonna feel a lot more inertia because the rotor already told you. You told the rotor, Mr. Rotor, can you spin with 4.8 times per crank? And he already told you no. Then you tell the same rotor, Mr. Rotor, can you spin with 6.3 turns per crank? Mr. Rotor will tell you, hell no. And then for the resistance, you already think that pulling a 2-inch Kitec with a 2-gram jig head with a 4.8 gear ratio, it already feels kind of heavy. And then you 6.3 gear ratio? So you negated everything that is good in expensive ultralight reel by getting the high gear ratio. So when I said I was stupid, tell me how it isn't. What's the point then of the whole thing? I know as soon as I say this, people get very defensive and edgy. You attack somebody's toy. It's like saying something bad about someone's truck. People get very defensive and very edgy. And they immediately start talking about needs and application. But in general, yeah, but the thing is, Victor, I need this for this application. For this application, you have to burn it. Otherwise, they won't hit it, Victor. You have to burn it, or they won't hit it, Victor. You know, you push somebody in a corner, make him a little bit uncomfortable. Right away, they have needs and applications. What applications in ultralight fishing? What needs? How far can you throw a 1 gram BG1? How far can you throw it, even with 2-pound polyester line? 50 feet? You need excellent tackle to throw a 1 gram BG1 50 feet. With heavier, you can cast farther. But really, it's not just me. I know exactly how far I'm casting. Oh, somebody made a very good order. Thank you very much, sir. I know exactly how much I'm casting because I fish with live scope. The fish is 30 feet in front of me. I cast 40 feet and then I retrieve it over the fish. I'm casting 40 feet. Why do I need a high gear ratio to retrieve 40 feet of line? Even with the 4.8 gear ratio, I turn the handle twice and the jig is already here. I'm already turning tap, tap, and stop, tap, tap, and stop, tap, tap, and stop. If there was 4.0 gear ratio, I'd probably buy it for twitching and for swim bait too. What if you're pulling 3-inch Kitec with a 3-gram jig head? You want to go even lower. Burning. Who is burning what in ultralight fishing? Spinners, for the trout. No, you have to burn it, otherwise they won't hit it. What application? I know ultralight fishing. Okay, so I don't know everything. Maybe somebody in surf fishing can make the case, these people fish with 13 feet rods with the big pit spools. They cast 150 yards, not feet, yards. And then you cast 150 yards and you see the bass is busting over there and the mullet is, getting killed over there. So you want a real fast cast there, but surf fishing, okay, maybe. Even then I would never do this myself and I have my reservations. But I can see how somebody who does surf fishing can make an argument that at least sounds very good. Even for bass fishing, they cast heavier lures, they cast farther than ultralight fishing. They can make the case too, but again, for bass fishing, I would never buy it. But this is me, and I admit I don't know about bass fishing and saltwater fishing and surf fishing, so I'm not claiming. You can make the case, but for ultralight fishing, where are you burning line? I see people fishing from the bank, realistic fishing. How far is he casting? 30, 40 feet. The fish is ultralight fishing. The fish is on the bank in the weeds. Even if you fish for bass, it's still by the bank. Even if you want to cast far, you cannot. Even if you can cast far, then let's say you want to reach a bridge that's kind of far from you, you're fishing from the bank. But if you manage to reach the bridge, you want to reel it slow while you're in the red zone. It doesn't make any sense for ultralight fishing. Additionally, I want to mention one other thing, just very briefly. If you ask ChatGPT to compare for you the durability, long-term durability, long-term life expectancy of low gear ratio reel versus high gear ratio reel, ChatGPT will tell you that low gear ratio reel in the long run will be more durable. I don't want to talk more about this. Maybe I'll just put a screenshot of the research that I did. I think in practice, it's a lot more important who owns the reel. If I own the reel, I don't let dirt get anywhere close to the reel. They even rarely get rained. Sometimes they get rained, but it will sit like this so water cannot get inside anyway. I'm very careful with my reels. I do regular maintenance. If the owner is careful, this is 90% of the expected durability of the reel. If it's somebody who just tosses them in the truck bed and they keep, bumping each other in transportation, if the person is not careful, low gear ratio doesn't matter. But in theory, because with low gear ratio, you have lower stress on the drivetrain, on your gears, on your transmission. In theory, especially with stop and go for twitching, you definitely, if it's something just continuous retrieval, not so obvious, but for stop and go, there is no high speed at all. The long-term wear will definitely be lower with a low gear ratio reel. But like I said, I don't want to make this video about durability. I personally never cared about durability in the first place. I just wanted to bring that up so somebody else doesn't bring it in the comments. That's kind of theoretical. It's not that key. But yeah, this is what I wanted to make a video about. You people who bought the C2000S models and the PG models, have no shame, have a little pride. You did the right thing.